Thanks to the Biden administration's religious war in Ukraine, this country is about to run out of diesel fuel. According to data from the Energy Information Administration, by the Monday of Thanksgiving week, that's 25 days from now, there will be no more diesel. So what's going to happen then? Well, everything will stop. That means trucks and trains and barges all unable to move. Farm equipment will shut down. There will be no deliveries because there will be no trucks. There will be no diesel generators. And then, inevitably, our economy will crash because everything runs on diesel fuel. Not on solar panels, not on wind farms, on diesel fuel. Diesel is not a negotiable commodity. You have to have diesel. So what happens when we don't have it? Well, yesterday, Fox's Jackie Heinrich, apparently alone in the White House press corps, asked the White House spokesman, John Kirby, that very question. What's the plan here? We're running out of diesel. John Kirby, standing at the podium, representing the White House, the President of the United States, the administration, the largest organization in human history, the executive branch of government, had no answer. But don't worry, he said. We will be exporting plenty of energy to Europe to help fight that progressive crusade in Ukraine. Watch.
What are we doing to increase the supply of diesel, given that the Energy Information Administration said as of October 14th, the U.S. only had about a 25-day supply? You have the Northeast and New York already rationing home heating oil. What are we doing to prepare for the winter and to ramp up supply of diesel?
I'll take the question on the diesel because I just don't have the data on that in front of me. So let me take that and we'll get back to you on that. But writ large, the president has been working very, very hard to make sure that we're that not only are we ready for fluctuations that could come, and of course the prices are going down, and we think that's important, but that we are also doing what we can to help our European friends and partners who are also going to be facing a long, cold winter. We have doubled our commitment. The commitment he made in March for natural gas exports to Europe, we've doubled that commitment in terms of actual, getting things over there, getting natural gas over there. And we are working with foreign suppliers of natural gas and oil to see if we can't help our European partners diversify their own storage and supplies.
So just pause and savor the irony here just for a moment, because now everything is irony. They've been telling you for decades, since Al Gore left the White House, that the single greatest threat to the world was warming. And because of their efforts to fight warming, you are in danger of freezing. And unlike warming, freezing actually kills people, a lot of people every year. And it will kill people in the West this year thanks to their efforts to fight warming. Okay. The second thing to notice is the White House spokesman's totally uninterested, blasé response to the most basic question anyone could ask, which is, what are we doing about the fact we're running out of diesel fuel? And he has no idea, and he's not embarrassed that he has no idea. The problem is, at this point, there may not be an answer, because there may not be a way to avoid a disaster. Diesel fuel is not just low in this country, it's low in every Western nation that has aligned itself with Ukraine. All these nations preparing for World War Trans are running out of diesel fuel. As New York Magazine has reported, the last time there was this little supply of diesel, there were about 3.5 billion fewer people on the planet. Well, that puts it in perspective. So the Biden administration responded, as you know, earlier this year to rising gas prices, which they feared above all because the midterms are coming in 2 weeks, by tapping the strategic petroleum reserves. But that will not work here. The Northeast Home Heating Oil Reserve contains 1 million barrels of diesel in case of emergencies. The problem is that demand is so high across the board that, according to the Washington Post, even if the Biden administration used every single barrel in that stockpile would be empty in less than 6 hours. And of course, it's not just diesel that's running out. Jet fuel is up about 23% in just the last month. Kerosene, which if you don't live in New York City, you know perfectly well is used to heat people's homes and keep them from dying, is now close to $7 a gallon. Who heats with kerosene, by the way? Poor people heat with kerosene. And they're the ones who can't get it. $7 a gallon. In New England, people are worried about freezing to death this winter. Here's a local Fox report.
West Hartford homeowner Sharona Resnick-Kravitz has been paying for oil to heat her home for more than 35 years.
I mean, this is New England. It gets cold here. We're cold.
Sharona is a widow living on a fixed income. She says before her husband passed away, they shared the bills. Now she is having to make sacrifices. How are
Yes.
you preparing and trying to figure out what can you sacrifice at this point?
Food. I go to the grocery store and I'm very frugal about what I buy.
She tells me at $6 a gallon, buying oil has become a huge burden. The average home uses 800 gallons of oil per year. That's almost $5,000 at the current rate.
The U.S. is facing a diesel shortage. Diesel helps fuel trucks, trains, and ships to get consumer goods closer to your home. But as the fuel rises, it also has a direct impact on the costs of shipping. News Channel 8's Brittany Muller joins us now live outside of a Tampa Bay trucking company. Obviously, they're concerned about these prices, Brittany.
They are, Josh. Good afternoon. It's $5.15 per gallon for diesel. And Lightning Transport here, they have 120 trucks. The company is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars per week to fill up. The price of diesel has been soaring for months.
Has really made us change our game.
Truck drivers with Lightning Transport were used to refueling just about anywhere. But operations manager Jason Stanley says now
We've had to come up with some strategic plans to not fuel in certain areas.
to try to get the lowest price possible. AAA says the average price of a gallon of diesel in Florida is $5.20, with 120 trucks in operation.
Our weekly fuel consumption runs anywhere from $350,000 to $380,000 a week, just a dollar amount, which that's a lot of money.
So planning around the economy is crucial. That's how Lightning Transport has maintained business. According to oilprice.com, diesel has reached the lowest level since 2008, adding the U.S. only has 25 days of diesel supply in reserve.
Without the fuel, the trucks don't run. So we really have to plan very, very hard to be able to maximize our profits.
The shortage is expected to raise fuel prices this winter.
We're facing a food pricing problem in 2022 that's creating havoc around the world. Well, if we don't get on top of this thing quickly, and I don't mean next year, I mean this year, you will have a food availability problem in 2023, and that's going to be hell on. We're looking at an $11 billion shortfall of food production inside Africa alone. Now, I could go to Central America, South America, same issues on droughts. India, devastated by heat and drought, and it could go on and on. We were able to avert famine in the last couple of years as I went to the leaders of the world, said if you don't respond, you will have catastrophe on catastrophe, is particularly in the height of COVID. And the leaders did respond. We averted famine. But then Ukraine comes on, shutting down the breadbasket of the world that produces enough food to feed 400 million people.
Later this week, we will get another report on the pace of inflation in the U.S., and there's some hope that it is finally slowing. But you've probably noticed higher prices at the grocery store already, on everything from dairy to meat to wheat products. The cost of groceries rose 13.5% in the past year. That's the largest increase in 43 years. Our economics correspondent, Paul Solman, looks at what's driving those costs up.
At the Daily Market in Boston's Dorchester neighborhood, I asked agricultural economist David Ortega about food prices. Have you ever seen anything like this?
Not in my lifetime, no.
So what are the major factors?
First, we have the supply chain disruptions from COVID that are still lingering. Those led to rising energy prices, rising transportation costs, rising labor costs. On average, 16 cents out of every dollar spent on food can be tied back to the farm. Everything else, the vast majority, has to do with things like processing cost, transportation, the wholesale and the retail trade. And we've seen all of those prices go up.
Meanwhile, another cost driver, climate change.
If we look at the heat and drought that's taking place out west in California, that's where a lot of our produce is coming from.
Right.
And a lot of those crops are lower in yield because of heat stress, some failed crops. And that's less food available in the market, which puts upward pressure on prices.
And then, of course, there's the war in Ukraine.
That region is what's called the breadbasket of Europe, a major supplier of wheat and sunflower oil, which goes into a lot of processed food products. So that set off rising commodity prices on the global market. They have started to come down from their highs back in April and May, but it takes time for all of that to work its way down the supply chain to consumers.
Finally, there's the fowl factor.
The bird flu outbreak this year, it's the second largest outbreak we've seen in modern history. It's affected over 40 million birds, many in commercial operations, and that sent the price of poultry and eggs surging.
As is evident on store shelves.
Eggs are up 40% year over year. The fear is that we're going to see further outbreaks as we get into the cooler months.
The price may go up even further.
It can. It all depends on what happens.
And if you plan to beat inflation by breakfasting on cereal instead of eggs, think again.
When we look at wheat and processed wheat products, they're up just above 20% year over year. Life cereal?
Life, yes.
Life. So that's $5.49 for this box here.
Yep.
Small box.
Yep.
A lot of that has to do with the rising grain prices from the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
The cost of butter up close to 30%.
Energy costs, transportation costs that are needed to make butter are all high.
When it comes to climbing coffee costs, climate change is the culprit, says Ortega.
Coffee in general, we're looking at about almost 20% more expensive than last year. A lot of this is tied to adverse weather around the globe, especially in coffee-producing regions like Brazil that saw frost and drought last year, and that's put upward pressure on prices.
It's a shock every time I want to get groceries.
The consumer reaction, sticker shock.
I mean, I'm a young professional here. I'm just earning a salary, so it's pretty hard to get by like this.
I pity people with families. I don't know how. My wife was from a family of 14. I don't know how people are feeding 4 or 5.
I mean, it sucks. I mean, I get that.
I feel for the customers, but it's just not abating.
James Baker owns the Daily Market.
We have a load that came in today. We have 13 pages of price changes we have to make. Right here. So we'll have price tags we have to put on the shelf to change the prices and increase them.
This is Nishki rice, brown, so brown rice. Previous price $5.39, retail price $7.49.
Yes. And this is from week to week.
No.
Yes, we get this once a week.
You know, I'm looking down here. There isn't an item that hasn't gone up in price.
There's a few. Not many.
School lunches, we can all remember those. But today, some kitchens look more like this one at Churchill High School in San Antonio, Texas. Except with inflation rising and crippling staff shortages, this school year, those fresh fruits and vegetables, among other items, are on the chopping block.
Strawberries may have tripled in price, and so we are not able to offer the strawberries.
Everything is harder to find, School Nutrition Director Sharon Glosson says. When they do, it often costs more, and they may not have the staff to serve it.
We would generally have 7 serving lines open. We've gone down to 4 serving lines with only 2 menu choices daily.
They say improvise with what you have, so and just make it look good and taste good, and they will take it.
School meals are often the healthiest students eat all day, a study shows. But as rising food costs are being felt in lunchrooms coast to coast, some districts are substituting frozen and processed foods for what was once fresh. Like Connie Daubels, Food and Nutrition Services Director for Davenport Community Schools in Iowa.
We can't get the taquitos, we can't get pancakes, we can't get French toast sticks, we can't get omelets, we can't get some of the beverages that we would like. And in our particular school district, we had to change bread providers. So we are not going to be able to have the same breads that we had last year.
The district is paying nearly double for bread this year, and the buns are smaller.
The students will notice that this year.
Back in San Antonio, those limited options and substitutions aren't going unnoticed either.
We have strawberry milk, pink milk,
They don't do that every day. You know, that used to be my favorite.
The quality has changed a little bit and the proportions have been cut down a little smaller.
There's only 3 of 7 lines that are open.
With the federal waiver that allowed all students to eat lunch for free during the pandemic gone and all the menu changes, parents like Genevieve Sagowski considering having her 2 students pack lunch this year.
We are already spending $280 a week on groceries. If the food changes to where it's not exactly what they want at school, we'll figure out a way for them to eat what they have at home.
A food fight like no other, with no end in sight.